Let's go back to a top story on the current situation on ground in Bangladesh and spate of attacks. We are joined by Veena Sikri, former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh, and also Namaste ma'am. And very glad to have Suhas Chakmaji, Director, Rights and Risk Analysis Group. It's a Delhi-based think tank which is keeping a very close watch on the developments there. So the big question here is that is Bangladesh now actually on brink? I would like to go to Ambassador Sikri. The kind of criticism and backlash and questions on the inability of the current dispensation led by Nobel laureate Dr. Yunus is concerned, or his administration is concerned. What is the message that Bangladesh is sending to the international community? The way things have unfolded, these attacks, these planned attacks reportedly, and the administration's inability to contain it. Is there an absolute absence of the justice system in Bangladesh?
Well, I think the only word to describe what's happening in Bangladesh right now seems to be anarchy, because there does not seem to be any government in control. The way that they have attacked the residents of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman is an indication, they're trying to destroy the very essence, the very unique symbolism of Bangabandhu's residence, because this is where he lived, this is where he worked, this is where he led the people, and this is where he was fascinated. But to destroy it is to try to destroy the spirit of the 1971 liberation war, and to tell the people that the symbolism that the 1971 liberation war values no longer carry any weight. But I think that the way that in which it was done, because you had this group of students who really are not students in any sense of the term, but they're just members of the Islami Chhatra Shibir, which is the students' wing of the Jamaat-e-Islami. And the way they came and destroyed this building, they had bulldozers with them.
Yes.
So who gave them the bulldozers? Must have been the government. And I think that this was a very sad indication. I'm very glad that the RRAG, led by Suhas Chakma, has done a wonderful study on what has happened in the last 6 months in Bangladesh between August and February, and the way the concern for human rights, for the dignity of the people has totally disappeared. The large amounts of imprisonments, the large amounts of destruction, the attacks on the minorities. This has been unheard of and unprecedented in Bangladesh, considering that just 50 years ago, they were, they battled the Pakistan army, they battled the genocidal attacks on the Pakistan army, and today, the same group, Pakistan army, Jamaat-e-Islami and Razakars, they think they have the upper hand, but I don't think the people are supporting them.
Okay. Suhas ji, your take. As we speak, we are flashing some of the points from the report that RRAG has released at the end of the 6 months of the Yunus government. And we may also, besides these graphics, play those disturbing visuals of vandalism. So having said that, your take, this is a passive stance by Yunus government to contain situation, and if that is closer to the reality, it's a very dangerous precedence that the administration is setting.
I think, people in the West, those who have been supporting Dr. Yunus, they think Yunus is an enabler of the mob in Bangladesh, which is actually the anti-discrimination movement, which only remains the leaders at this point of time with the support of the Jamaat-e-Islami workers. I would go possibly a further step to say that actually Yunus is not the enabler of the mob. He is actually the mobster.
Okay.
I think we have the perception that, these mobs could roam around and, demolish the house of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman for 1.5 days and get away. It's happening simply because the chief advisor and all other advisors, they knew that, this destruction is going to come up, and it was already announced. Hassan Abdullah had already announced, the convener of the anti-discrimination movement, that they are going to make a history on this day. They are going to destroy the 32 Dhanbandi. Then if the government knew in advance, obviously they could have taken action. So now, after all the demolition work has been done, Yunus is saying, it should not be repeated as if there is another building at 32 Dhanmandi. So you could see that, I have been saying, we have to look at the way the students or the anti-discrimination students movement have been used by Yunus government. They first sought the resignation of all the judges. They removed the judges. They tried to remove the president of the country, which they were not successful. If they were successful to remove the president, then they would have removed the chief of army staff. Fortunately, I think the chief of army staff and the Bangladesh president, they stood against each other. And thereafter, you could see that, he has been going around and attacking the newspapers and forcing the newspapers to sack the, the journalists whom he thinks that they are misinterpreting his own opinion. So you could see wherever Hassan Abdullah goes, he is the law of the land. And there is no police person, nobody to arrest him. So it doesn't make any sense for the chief advisor to say it should not be repeated. He should be taking action. And please remember, the headquarters of the Jatiyo Party in the heart of Dhaka was burned down, and Hassan Abdullah was celebrating it. So if you look at it, the Yunus has been using the students to silence basically Awami League or anybody who dares to say anything in favor of remotely could be perceived as supporter of Awami League. So he is running a mob rule. And he runs this mob rule.
If he is running the mob rule, is there any space for a politically elected government? Elections. We are, I think last week or last to last week, we were talking about if Awami League can make a comeback and can we have free and fair elections, come back in the electoral process. But looking at the current situation, Ambassador Sikri?
Well, I agree with you that elections, free, fair and inclusive elections is the only way out of the present situation. When the interim regime was sworn in on the 5th of August, at that time the constitution didn't even have the provision for an interim regime, but subsequently the courts have revived that provision. But even so, the caretaker government is supposed to be there only for 90 days and only to look after law and order and to help the election commission in conducting elections. But 6 months have passed and there is no talk at all of the electoral process. About 11 reform commissions have been set up. Now, reforms are the prerogative of an elected government. It is a new parliament which can do reforms of any kind they want. There cannot be any question of an interim regime thinking they can, have reports made and they can act on those reports and so on. So I think that this is why the people seem to be more and more disappointed with the actions of the Yunus regime, because they're not in keeping with their hopes. They had hoped that there would be elections very soon, and if they had complaints or there was anti-incumbency feeling against Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, they would have the opportunity to express it through the electoral vote. And I think that this is what has to be the focus of the future. And I think the very fact that the Yunus regime is showing no interest and no signs on this, rather they're creating a king's party, their Jamaat-e-Islami is trying to bring together all the Islamist groups, and the other main opposition party, BNP, has asked for early elections. So I think that the focus has to be on that, and the world community should be focusing on that. I'm sure the report of the RAG goes to the UN Human Rights Commission.
Ma'am Sikri, I want a quick comment before I take final comments from Chakmaji. India has expressed deep regret on the situation, and especially, and I quote, on the regular statements made by Bangladeshi authorities, which continue to portray India negatively, holding India responsible for internal governance issues. How do you see this panning out as far as the diplomatic relations between the two nations under Yunus's regime is concerned?
Well, the government of India on the very first day, has said that we are prepared to deal with the government and we value the relationship between India and Bangladesh. We want it to continue to be one based on mutual benefit and trust and friendship. And I think that that we carried out our words, and our foreign secretary was there in the month of December as well. But I think that there has been absolutely no response from the Mohammed Yunus regime. Rather, they have been making very sarcastic statements about India. They are trying to run a very
irresponsible statement.
Yes, and they're running a vicious anti-India campaign, and they're blaming India for everything that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina did. They said they did this only because of India. Now, I think that it is very, very clear that India never interfered in the internal affairs of any country.
Yes.
And we feel that if something is an internal affair, they must decide it for themselves. And that's why we want a very early, free, fair and inclusive elections in Bangladesh.
Yes.
And I think that the way in which the regime of Mohammed Yunus has shown no interest in having talks with India. They have never visited India.
Okay.
The foreign advisor had been to China, but no interest at all in visiting India. Rather, our foreign secretary was there.
Yes, yes, I got that point. And just final comment from Suhas Chakmaji. Also, you and your organization RRAG, you are seeking UN resolution on this. Are you going to take this forward aggressively with UN?
We have been already taking up. We have taken up with most of the permanent missions in Geneva, saying that there is a need for a resolution of the UN Human Rights Council, and it's something only which we are saying.
Yes.
It has already been demanded by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights in October, and from October till now, the government of Bangladesh has not responded positively. And what they are trying to do is basically use the office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights for their political purposes. What they have done is to invite the High Commissioner to investigate violations only for a brief period of time. But that could risk the independence of the High Commissioner. So that's why I think we want a full resolution with a proper mandate to investigate all human rights violations in Bangladesh.
Right. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Suhas Chakma and Ambassador Sikri, for joining us on this story. Thank you both.